Hey, AP Seminar. All right, the last lesson you got sort of the overview of the TMP. You got the basic concept of what it is that you're supposed to do and how you go about preparing to do that. Hopefully from that, what you understood is that this is a problem solution presentation where you're using all of the information from, or a lot of the information from all of the papers so that you can talk about this problem from different lenses and then try to address some of the issues that those lenses have and specifically what some of the perspectives within those issues need in order to feel as though the problem has been solved. Now, if any of that is still unclear, make sure you ask. But now we're going to go ahead and talk more about just specifically how you build this presentation, the nuts and bolts of it. I'm going to start by going over the 5 or 6 parts that make up the presentation, and then I'll go into each part in depth to give you some idea of what you need to do in order to have the sufficient information for each part of the presentation. So, the 5 or 6 parts. There is an introduction, where you'll introduce the problem, then you'll just give us your research question, the group's research question. Then you'll outline the problem, discussing issues that you believe need to be overcome. Then you'll discuss 2 different possible solutions, and we'll talk about what you do when you introduce and discuss those solutions in just a few minutes. And then once you've done that, your group is going to decide on a solution that you believe best serves or best satisfies your group's research question. So that's the basic overview. Now, the most important part of all of this is that you make sure you are including the best, most convincing, most informative evidence to support almost every level of this outline. There should be evidence throughout. And we'll talk about how to use the evidence in each of the sections. So let's start with introductions. In the introduction, you have to tell us why we care about this and how it started. It's similar to the introduction for your paper. When did this begin? How long has it been going on? How many people are involved? What part of the world are we talking about? How much land has been consumed? How much money has been wasted? As specifically and as convincingly as you can. And don't forget, every time you mention something about number of miles or number of people, we need evidence. We need credible evidence that allows us to believe that this is actually something that's happening. So you're setting the stage. How did this begin? Where did this come from? Who is involved? Once you have done that, then you can just give your group's research question. What is it that your group is trying to solve? What is the research question that your group is operating under? After you've had a chance to state your group's research question, now you're going to concentrate specifically on what you see as the problem. Now, in order to address the problem, you need to isolate the 3-4 issues or so that must be overcome in order to solve this. As you are illustrating the problem, I am going to be noting the things that you describe as the hurdles that have to be overcome in order to solve this issue or to solve this topic, to satisfy your research question. So every issue that is a hurdle to this being solved from multiple lenses. So what is the issue economically? What is the issue environmentally? What are the issues scientifically that have to be satisfied in order for this to be solved? And then when you go to give your solutions a little bit later on, I'm going to be measuring your solutions against the way you've articulated the problem. So if there are 5 things that illustrate how bad or how difficult this is, I'm going to need you to have addressed those 5 things in your solution as to whether or not it satisfies that issue. Now, just like with the introduction, when you're going through the problem, you do need evidence. So if you're telling me that there are X number of gallons of contaminated water in this river, we need a number to prove that, and it needs to come from a credible source. If you're showing that X million dollars have been lost too, you need a source that is credible, that we can trust, that proves that that problem is as you say it is. Now, once you have that problem and you have fleshed it out with evidence, now we can get into the real purpose of the essay, which is to address solutions. When we look at the rubric, you'll see that solutions, there must be at least two. It'll say solutions plural. And for each solution, you not only need to identify the areas of the problem that the solution succeeds in addressing, but you also need to identify the limitations of that solution. Let me say that again. You're not just talking about how the solution succeeds in solving the problem, you're also discussing the limitations. Which lenses, which perspectives within those lenses does this solution not satisfy? And just like when you define the problem, every time you discuss how this solution works, you need evidence. If we implement this, then this will happen. Evidence to prove that. Now, after you've done that with solution one, you do the same thing with a second solution. There must be plural, at least two solutions. And it's the same process. What elements of the problem does this solution succeed in addressing? And what issues within the problem does this solution not address? What perspectives inside of issues, inside of lenses, are not satisfied by elements of this solution, and which are? And again, with evidence. Every time you're telling me about the effectiveness or ineffectiveness of this solution, you are doing so, or you're proving the effectiveness with evidence. And I will be measuring what you say in these solutions against how you've defined the problem. Once you've covered at least two solutions, then your group needs to advocate for a best solution. Of these choices, which or what should we do? Maybe it is a separate solution that you haven't already discussed, a third, brand new, different approach to this. That's great. Maybe it's taking one solution over the other of the ones you've just explained and discussing why it is the better of the two solutions. Or maybe you're going to take a mixture of different solutions and talk about how there are limitations and opportunities with this best solution. That's right. Even the best solution must have limitations. You must discuss how this isn't the perfect cure-all, how there are still some things that this solution doesn't address. And again, just like with all of the other aspects of this presentation, you're going to be selecting evidence to prove that this solution does what you say it will do. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of evidence, and it is, but it can't be. Which means you need to seek out just the best, most convincing pieces of evidence to make the points you want to make. You can't just throw all of your evidence at every point, or you're going to go way over the time limit. And here's the thing. The time limit is 10 minutes. There is no allowance for over. If you go 10 minutes and 2 seconds over, anything that happened in those 2 seconds didn't exist. So if you don't get to propose what your group believes is the best solution by the time the 10 minutes is up, you didn't do that part of the speech. Anything that happens after 10 minutes just doesn't exist. Also, once you have finished with the presentation, once the 10 minutes is over, you've presented all of your information, then there's going to be an opportunity for me to ask each group member one question. And that one question is going to deal with the process involved in coming to the decisions that your group had to make in order to put this presentation together. I'm going to ask how you chose or how you left out certain arguments or pieces of information. A convincing thing in someone else's paper that didn't make it into the presentation, or a convincing thing in someone else's paper that changed your opinion about what the group solution should be. They're almost always process questions. And so you need to be involved in the process of creating this presentation. You need to be involved in the decision-making process. Why are we including this argument and not this one? Why are we using this evidence and not this piece of evidence? You have to know that, so that when you are asked how these things were decided, you know because you were there and you were part of the decision-making process. So that is the presentation in terms of how it's structured, how it's built. There are 5 or 6 parts, depending on if you have a separate best solution. Every part, except when you announce your research question, should have really convincing evidence. Evidence that proves that this information is indeed accurate and that your solutions indeed will be effective to a certain degree. Remember, when you're discussing the solutions, no matter which solution it is, you must also acknowledge the limitations of that solution. Which ways does this solution not address certain elements of the problem? As always, if you have questions about elements of this presentation, make sure that you let me know. I will get back to you as soon as I can with whatever you might need. You're going to be working in groups now. You're going to be working in those groups in order to try to figure out how you're going to structure this. What issues are you going to focus on? What information, what evidence are you going to use to address solutions to these problems? So good luck with that. If you have questions, as always, make sure you email me. And then one final thing. You have a paper that's due as well, and the due date for that is in Canvas. While you are doing the group work on this presentation on your own, you are looking at the feedback from the peer review in order to inform your first round of revisions. Revise everything in light of the peer review comments. Then apply the self-review. Now with that self-review document, you're going to submit the form right back to the assignment that you got the form from. And there are places on there where you're supposed to type things in. The actual copy of the research paper that you're going to annotate according to what that form tells you to do, that copy of that paper gets submitted to a separate assignment that says annotated rough draft. So there are 2 assignments with your self-edit. There's the self-edit activity that goes right back into the assignment you got it from. Then there is the annotated rough draft that gets attached to a separate assignment. And those are both due on the day that you're turning in your final paper. All right, that's that. As you have questions, make sure you ask. I'm always around. You have quite a bit of group work to do now. After your group has gotten its presentation together, we will work on getting you an opportunity to practice and then practice with a different group. So good luck. Email if you got questions, and we'll talk to you again soon.